In the explosive legal battle between Justin Baldoni and Blake Lively, new text messages reveal shocking behind-the-scenes drama. From Blake Lively's alleged push to control the film's edit to these apparent mentions of Taylor Swift and even a weight discussion, these text messages paint a very different story than what Lively has publicly claimed. So we're going to break down the top bombshell messages you need to see. Hollywood is still trying to wrap their heads around this major legal battle that's happening between Justin Baldoni and Blake Lively after he filed this bombshell lawsuit accusing her, along with her husband Ryan Reynolds, of trying to smear him and damage his reputation. Namely, the claims here are false allegations of a hostile work environment and sexual harassment that were made against him in connection with the production of the movie It Ends With Us that starred both him and Blake Lively. And although we did a previous breakdown of this entire lawsuit, and you can check it out on our Long Crime YouTube page, what we want to focus upon right now are those text messages, those never-before-seen text messages embedded in this complaint that make up a big part of what is a staggering $400 million lawsuit. So what we're going to do is we're going to break down the most shocking revelations from these text messages. But first I have to give you some backstory on this in case you haven't been following the day in and day out of this case. So the conflict began in December of 2024 when Blake Lively filed a formal complaint with the California Civil Rights Department accusing Baldoni and others, and remember he was the director and one of the stars in the film, accusing him and others of creating a hostile work environment on that film set. She alleged sexual harassment, boundary violations, even being pressured into filming a controversial naked birth scene. Lively claimed that after speaking up, she was subjected to retaliation, including what she says is a smear campaign aimed at discrediting her in the public. And the situation escalated quite dramatically, I'll add, when the New York Times published this really big report the day after Lively's complaint that included these conversations between those in Baldoni's camp about seemingly or allegedly taking down Lively. There's one specific exchange that comes out a lot, and it's between Baldoni's former publicist and also his crisis manager, and it included this ominous message. He wants to feel like she can be buried. To which the crisis manager replied, "You know we can bury anyone." Now, Baldoni has adamantly denied these claims. His team is calling them all categorically false. He has accused Lively of making threats to sabotage the film unless her demands were met, so he has reversed the narrative. And on New Year's Eve, Baldoni fired back. First, he fired back with a $250 million defamation lawsuit against the New York Times, accusing them of misrepresenting the story by selectively quoting text messages that supported Lively's narrative, that they didn't do their proper due diligence, that they mischaracterized what was going on here. And then we have this, Baldoni's staggering 179-page lawsuit against Blake Lively and others. And it includes within it a series of eye-popping text exchanges that, according to him, paint a drastically different picture than the one Lively presented in her complaint. By the way, not to take away from this story in any way, but listen guys, we just got this new sponsor that helps support this show. I have personally been using their products for years, and I am so happy that they're partnering with us. It's a men's grooming line called Brickle. Seriously, I use their moisturizer, their eye creams every day. And did I mention hair products? Let me say that again. Hair products. I know my hair is quite the topic of conversation online. I see all the comments. Okay, I see them. But you can now try these products for free. Yes, free with Brickle's 16-piece sample kit. It includes face washes, anti-aging creams, hair care. There's so much there. All you're paying for is the shipping. There's no subscriptions. There's no strings attached. It's just a one-time introduction to the brand to see what might work for you. So right now you can head over to bricklemensproducts.com/sidebar or scan the QR code on screen and claim your free kit today. So here's a breakdown of some of the most revealing text messages that are included in this complaint. Now, Baldoni claims that when production on It Ends With Us began, he and Lively were close. They quickly bonded. They shared personal stories, inside jokes. They built this, what seemed to be a positive rapport with one another, and that's important. He cites this playful exchange from May of 2023 where he appears to tease Blake Lively about her sentimental nature, to which Lively then responded in kind with self-deprecating humor. Everything looked like it was on the up and up. And these text messages are important because it appears to show that, at least at first, their relationship was lighthearted, that it was casual, that it was friendly. And that raises serious questions about whether or not Baldoni crossed the line or was inappropriate, and the claims that Lively makes about her feeling what is essentially uncomfortable around Baldoni. Now, in those text messages, Baldoni says, "I like sentimental Blake," and this prompts Lively to say, "Never met her." And when Baldoni teases her further, saying, "I also like a-hole Blake," Lively responds and jokes right back and says, "I've met her, so have my suppositories." Now, Baldoni argues that this playful banter exchange between two seasoned professionals suggests a level of comfort between them, that he says it makes it all the more upsetting when she later accuses him of harassment. But here is where the plot thickens, no pun intended. And this is when Blake Lively allegedly attempted to rewrite one of the most pivotal scenes of the movie, the infamous, iconic rooftop scene between Baldoni's character of Ryle and Lively's character of Lily. Now, the big theme, as we're about to get into, is control. Control over the film. So in this lawsuit, Baldoni recounts how Lively had asked him if she could, quote, take a pass at writing the scene, something that he was initially hesitant to allow because as the director, Baldoni was determined to keep control over such a crucial moment of the film. However, after some back and forth, Baldoni agreed and acquiesced to review Lively's version to keep everything okay, simpatico. And what followed, according to Baldoni, was nothing short of dramatic, because Lively's version of the scene drastically differed from the original, and that left Baldoni really unsure about her changes. So Baldoni says he tried in a diplomatic way to tell Lively, look, the final scene would likely fall somewhere between her version and the original script. And this was an attempt to kind of ease the tension. However, he says this seemed to offend Lively, that she took it personally. And this is where, out of all people, music sensation pop star Taylor Swift allegedly comes in. Why? Because Baldoni claims that at Lively's New York penthouse, he is confronted by Ryan Reynolds, again her husband, and their very good friend, Taylor Swift. And they end up telling Baldoni how great Lively's version of the script is. They're praising it. And Baldoni says in the complaint that he understood this to mean, you better comply with Lively's direction of the script. So in response to that, he apparently texts Blake Lively that he likes her script. His text reads, "Also was working on the rooftop scene today. I really love what you did. It really does help a lot. Makes it so much more fun and interesting. And I would have felt that way without Ryan and Taylor." Now, in response, Lively had expressed what was her initial disappointment with Justin Baldoni's idea, first let's combine your draft with the original draft. And she seemed to be really bothered by Baldoni praising her passion for the scene as opposed to her actual contribution of her work. She wrote back, "I told them," seemingly meaning Reynolds and Swift, "that you laughed a bunch and said it's probably a blend, but you appreciate my passion so much," which of course didn't feel great for me or them to have my passion be praised instead of any specific contribution, or even just that you didn't like the pages, which was fine also. So essentially, Lively is expressing that it wasn't her contribution that got the praise, but rather her passion. That's what frustrated her. And she goes on to mention that the influence of Reynolds and Swift in her life is very important, stating they, again, meaning Reynolds and Swift, or seemingly, also know I'm not always good at making sure I'm seen and utilized for fear of threatening egos or fear of affecting the ease of the process. They don't give a blank about that. And because of that, everyone listens to them with immense respect and enthusiasm. So I guess I have to stop worrying about people liking me. Now, Baldoni interprets this message as a clear sign that he wasn't just dealing with Blake Lively anymore. He was now up against two of the most powerful and influential celebrities in Hollywood, both of whom, according to him, weren't afraid to speak up and maybe make his life difficult. Next, the legal documents reveal a very personal point of contention in this story, and it surrounded Blake Lively's weight. You see, the question was whether Baldoni inquiring about Lively's weight was for a good faith reason, or was he fat-shaming her? Depends on who you ask in the case. Baldoni claims he wanted to know Lively's weight because in a certain scene, he was required to lift her up. The problem was, he says he has a history of back issues. So Baldoni explains he needed to ensure that the scene would be safe both for him and Lively. And messages within the lawsuit show Baldoni asking Lively's personal trainer for a back strengthening workout plan, with the trainer sending a 4-point exercise list. But the day after Baldoni had apparently made this request, he claims he was summoned to Lively's penthouse, where he was allegedly berated by Ryan Reynolds. According to the lawsuit, Reynolds confronted Baldoni aggressively, saying, "How dare you bleeping ask about my wife's weight? What's wrong with you?" And this confrontation, Baldoni claims, was so intense that he was forced to apologize profusely. And the lift scene was ultimately removed from the script, allegedly, according to Baldoni, at Lively and Reynolds' request. But this entire exchange is why Lively later perceives it and has accused Baldoni of fat shaming. And that's a claim that Baldoni denies, suggesting the situation was taken out of context here. In fact, the lawsuit includes several text exchanges that show Baldoni was allegedly supportive and reassuring when it came to Lively's body image. For example, in February of 2023, before the trainer incident, Lively had expressed concerns about her postpartum figure. And Baldoni responded in a supportive, positive manner, writing back, "I want you to know you will look amazing. Anything you're insecure about, we will talk through and get creative together and make you comfortable. I just don't want you to stress about your body. It's the last thing you need." These messages are crucial because they counter Lively's claims in her complaint, which again accuses Baldoni of making inappropriate comments about her physical appearance. This is a different narrative. And these texts appear to show Baldoni trying to help Lively feel more comfortable in her own skin. At least there's an argument for that. And Lively's response to Baldoni in this exchange arguably helps him, because she writes back, or seemingly writes back, "I understand that you'll never personally know all the nuances of the challenges unless you live this physical moment in time I'm in with this physical road ahead. So having your understanding and support to help me pull this off is critical and very, very appreciated. Not just in my experience now, but also healing from experiences past. So thank you." Now, Baldoni interprets these messages as evidence of Lively's vulnerability, her gratitude, suggesting that she was comfortable enough to share her personal struggles. We'll see how a jury ultimately views these messages. But let's move on to this. Baldoni also argues that these intimate moments could have been part of a larger strategy to manipulate him. In Baldoni's lawsuit, he makes the argument that Lively, while seemingly comfortable with him at all times, may have been using this rapport to gain control over various aspects of the production, which he felt she eventually attempted to do. So the following text from May of 2023 is cited as one example where Lively seems to be freely discussing wardrobe choices and even referring to herself in a sexualized manner, suggesting that Baldoni wasn't the one who pushed the boundaries here, but rather it was her directing their interaction. Quote, "We'll show you both ways, but the beanie is much sexier. It's the look. Feels TV without, especially with a crop top in the snow. It justifies the rest of the skin. And also as a girl, I would check out walking down the street because it washes the effort off the rest of the look." Remember, that's from Lively. And remember, Lively has accused Baldoni of making unwarranted comments about her physical appearance, particularly allegations that Baldoni was referring to Lively as sexy, but she was the one who used that word. So this message could suggest that Lively was comfortable referring to herself in this way in their own communications. So Baldoni is using this example to challenge the claim that Lively felt uncomfortable or that he objectified her in any way. And then there's another text where Lively seemingly uses the term ball buster, and that shows a more casual and perhaps provocative tone. So this is also from May, where Lively allegedly refers to herself as a ball buster, and that's a term that Baldoni says if he had made it himself to Lively, she would have definitely found it inappropriate. So this text reads, "I'm just a ball buster, but it means a lot to me. I care a great deal." Now, a footnote in the lawsuit suggests that if Baldoni had used this language, it would have been, again, a point of contention. But Lively is the one who uses it in this context, which raises further questions about how uncomfortable she actually was with Justin Baldoni. Okay, so as the production continued on, Baldoni made the argument that Lively's initial signs of her being comfortable around him, that gradually shifted, and it shifted into something more manipulative. For example, in June of 2023, Lively apparently invited Baldoni to her trailer while she was breastfeeding, and that suggests this ongoing sense of intimacy and ease, and she is the one who introduced these uncomfortable situations, because that text reads, "I'm just pumping in my trailer if you want to work out lines." And although Baldoni's response to this is not included here, it was included in his lawsuit against the New York Times, where he appeared to respond saying, "Sure, I'll be right over." But let's not forget, Lively later contends in her complaint against Baldoni that Baldoni would show up uninvited to her trailer while she was breastfeeding. So a he said, she said about this situation. Baldoni's take on this message, though, is that it shows Lively was inviting him into her space and creating this collaborative working environment, not the other way around. And one of the most significant allegations in Baldoni's lawsuit is that Lively sought to gain control over the editing process of the film. This is important because during the 2023 writer's strike, Baldoni started editing the footage that had already been shot. But that's when Lively apparently expressed a strong interest in accessing the raw dailies. These usually aren't shared with the cast, according to Baldoni. But Lively apparently also wanted to have a hand in the editing process, and a text from her appears to read, "Hey, would you mind giving me access to the dailies? I appreciate you may be too slammed right now to make this happen, but maybe someone else can facilitate?" And just to put a point on this, dailies are a critical point of the filmmaking process, the editing process. The actors don't typically get access to them. If they do, it's usually rare, requires special permission. But here, Lively allegedly repeatedly pushed for access to this because it was evidenced by her follow-up text in July of 2023 that reads, "Please let me know who to reach out to get access to the full gallery of dailies. I'm so looking forward to seeing all that we have in the can." This request allegedly raised some concern among the film's crew. A producer and the CEO of Wayfarer Studios, Jamie Heath, are reportedly shown to be against granting Lively access to the dailies because the messages from the lawsuit reveal their apparent resistance to the idea. There's one that says, "I'd say no, but check her contract first." That's what one producer says. And then a response, supposedly from Heath, says, "It's an absolute no from me as well." This series of texts shows that while Lively seemed to be involved and invested in the production, she was also seen by some crew members as trying to maybe overstep professional boundaries, particularly when it comes to the editing process. Baldoni argues that Lively's attempts to control these aspects of the film, like the editing and the wardrobe choices, were part of a broader strategy to manipulate him and assert her power and dominance over this project. And this is where things get even more interesting. Because if Baldoni's version of events is accurate, that Lively truly did take over the editing process, this next text thread seems to foreshadow exactly that. Because in one of his texts, Baldoni writes, an unredacted name, so we don't know who this person is, believes that she will then start to edit the movie and tell me which takes to use if she has access to everything. And another text from him reads, also, this is exactly how the writing process started. She asked if it was okay if she could take a pass at some dialogue tweaks on the rooftop scene. Okay, so Baldoni seems to suggest that he heard from someone else that Lively was planning to take control of the editing process. And when Lively allegedly pressed him on her access to the footage, Baldoni appears to respond politely, but he's also firm. Because look at this text. Regarding dailies, again, this is to Blake Lively, regarding dailies, obviously you know I want your input. That's why I sent the 5-hour playlist. But at this point, it's too early for me to share all the dailies. Once I am physically in the edit and have touched scenes myself, I'd love to share with you. Lively, however, did not appear to be easily deterred because she allegedly pressed further with this response. Regarding dailies, none of the producers have had access to dailies. It's just you. So Baldoni responds. He clarifies that the dailies were restricted to only the top-level people on the film, responding, no, not just me. Redacted name and Jamie Heath have access to dailies. So this exchange highlights how Baldoni was trying to maintain control over the editing process, but Lively's alleged insistence seemed to grow stronger and stronger from there. And remember, this is important when we're analyzing Lively's claims against Baldoni. Are they true about what he did, or were they fabricated? Were they distorted so she could get control over the film to paint him as a bad guy, particularly if he was resistant to her demands. Now, after the filming wrapped, she allegedly began pushing more forcefully to be involved in the editing process, because in a text from February of 2024, Baldoni explained that the film was still in rough shape and that he needed time to work on it before he brought her in. His message read, "The movie is currently all over the place, and I need a few weeks to get it into some sort of shape to even present to you. What I would love to do is bring you in on the 18th and have us work together until you leave." To which Lively responded, "I'd love to be in the passenger seat with you as soon as possible. The sooner we put our heads together, the better." Baldoni, according to his version of events, ultimately conceded and allowed Lively to be more involved in the editing process, with text showing his internal struggle over this, because he told editors, "What's best for the movie is I suck it up and let her in." And this, he says, led to Blake Lively gaining more approval over certain scenes, as Baldoni relayed in more text exchanges. For example, when an editor inquired about a specific scene, Baldoni responded, "That's going to end up being a Blake call, honestly. She has, quote, approval of that scene." Additionally, Baldoni references a situation where Blake Lively allegedly took issue with a scene depicting someone else, depicting a younger version of her character, Lily Bloom. And this was a scene involving an intimate moment during high school. So according to Baldoni, Lively was not happy with how the scene portrayed her character and demanded that there be changes made. Because in another text he wrote, "When she claimed she was unsafe, she redid the nudity rider to get approval of young Lily too, because she wasn't a part of writing that sex scene and didn't want her character depicting her to have sex in high school. Honestly, it's all about control so she could get to where she will be next week. All good." By the way, that rider is in relation to what we talked about in a previous episode, how Blake Lively had demanded, if she's going to resume production on this set, that Baldoni and others have to change certain things that they do. Remember, she made the allegations of sexual harassment in a hostile work environment. But here he's saying that she kind of put into that rider creative control over the younger version of her character. Now, finally, by May, Baldoni claims that Lively had successfully convinced Sony, the distributor of the film, to let her create her own cut of the film. Allegedly, that she threatened that she wouldn't promote the movie if it wasn't her version, if it wasn't her cut. So no longer was she merely sitting in on the editing process with him. According to him, she was now fully in charge of her version of the film. And that version, according to Sony, was the one that ended up being released in theaters. Now, Baldoni argues he never even got to see this final cut before it was shown to the public. A text exchange from July reveals Baldoni's frustration with this situation, because he apparently told someone, whose name is redacted, that he had still not seen the locked cut of the movie. "I have not seen the locked cut of the film. Evidently, it's been worked on more and she's been mixing. I'm getting to give notes as a studio today, not a director. Very hard, but I'm okay." Now, an editor responding to Baldoni's concerns noted, "The last I heard was that she was putting a fair amount of our version. Just not sure what that entailed or to what extent. I guess you'll find out." And indeed, Baldoni did find out at the New York premiere on August 6th of 2024, because according to Baldoni, he was not initially even permitted to attend the event. He claims that it was only after Wayfarer allegedly convinced Lively to allow him to attend that he was granted access, that she was blocking him from coming. Now, you have two sides here, right? So Baldoni says this was all an effort to hijack the film to get her way. Lively claims she was the victim of harassment in a hostile work environment. Not surprising that they should be separated, and maybe he shouldn't be there. But Baldoni sent a text referencing this situation that reads, "I'm going to be there. That's just different timing and holding areas in theaters and all the things you can imagine." And embedded in the complaint are pictures of Baldoni and his friends and family at what appears to be the basement of that premiere, while the real premiere was happening upstairs, that he was secluded. He and his close family and friends were secluded to this area, this private area, away from everybody else. Now, as we mentioned in our previous sidebar, Blake Lively's team has denied all of these allegations. They have responded to this filing, this lawsuit, saying, "This is an age-old story. A woman speaks up with concrete evidence of sexual harassment and retaliation, and the abuser attempts to turn tables on the victim. The strategy of attacking the woman is desperate. It does not refute the evidence in Miss Lively's complaint, and it will fail." So as the legal drama continues to unfold, it is clear that the tensions surrounding the film's production are far from over. Stay tuned for more updates as this Hollywood saga develops. The drama is apparently just beginning.